presentation series hosted by the East Tennessee State University Ballad Health Strong Brain Institute. If you would like to be added to our email list, please go ahead and type your email address in the chat and we would be delighted to add you. My name is Megan Quinn and I'm one of the Associate Directors of the Strong Brain Institute. The Strong Brain Institute, or the SBI, was founded by a $1 million 5-year gift to ETSU from Ballad Health. What we know is that the majority of Americans have experienced at least one major adverse experience at some point in their childhood. At ETSU specifically, 1 in 4 of our students have lived through or may still be living through 3 or more major adverse experiences. The goal of the SBI is to use the science of childhood adversity coupled with mitigation science and resilience science to prevent and mitigate the negative impacts of ACEs on children's and adults' lives and to promote awareness and the use of resilience-informed procedures and policies, both at ETSU and throughout the Appalachian Highlands region. We are a resource for people to turn to when they have questions about how to best employ resilience-informed strategies and practices in their workspace. Dr. Christian and her team are doing amazing work to help mitigate ACEs and foster resilience in our region. I'll now turn the floor over to Dr. Christian to introduce her team and provide our session today. Thanks for being here.
So good afternoon. We want to welcome everyone. I know this is going to be an opportunity for us to learn together how to support our students. I want to introduce our team. You're going to learn from the great leaders in Unicoi County Schools today. Dr. Virginia Foley serves as our partner, coach, and trainer through the ETSU partnership. Dr. Kevin Graham and Dr. Amy Horton are the principals at Unicoi Middle and High School. I'm going to talk a little bit more about them in just a few moments. And Dr. Kyle Loudermilk is the Tennessee Principal of the Year, and he's at John Sevier Middle School. So we'll talk more about each of our partners as we share the work with more depth. In 2021, we had a conversation with Unicoi County Schools about the opportunity to create a partnership that could leverage tools, resources, and practices to investigate how can we support students in a continuum of service from pre-K to 12th grade. The conversation unfolded under the direction of Mr. John English, the Director of Schools. He talked with the different principals, and they'll share their story with you in a bit about this partnership and how could we provide service for students who are in the elementary school and then in a transition to middle, and then in a transition to high school. But also, what tools and resources would we look at to guide our practices, to help us listen deeply to teachers and educational assistants, students, as we are conducting this work. To do that, we crafted surveys called the Resilient Schools Mid-Year Student Success Survey, and then also Changing School Culture Survey. This work is about looking deeply at how school cultures are changing and new systems that are going to be put into place. The framework that is guiding the conversation and our work and focus today is around leadership practices, trauma-informed practices, and community engagement practices. The Resilient Schools framework is a learner-first framework. And what we understand is that evidence-based practices are working in schools. So how can we connect great work to a systems innovation that allows us to think about access for students who have experienced adverse childhood experiences and supports for adults who are in stressful moments in their own personal lives or professional setting, so we can mitigate long-term health concerns for the adults and students that we serve in our community. I'm deeply grateful for the conversation today because, to the point on community engagement practices, the framework recognizes 7 systems that should be in place, but also 7 evidence-based practices. The community engagement piece unfolded in year 2 of our partnership. And it is my honor to share with you that Ballad Health Behavioral Health reached out to Unicoi County Schools in year 2 to see how they could support the work around trauma-informed practices for students in the middle and high school, and what innovation could look like when we share the expertise from the mental health perspective and how they serve our students in the community following the school day, a bridge back into the school when students have required more intensive support, and leveraging expertise in the training that you see here before you. Mrs. Graham, can you share this story at this point?
Thank you, Dr. Christian. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Brooke Graham, and I serve as the Chief Operating Officer for Ballad Health Behavioral Health, alongside Dixie Way, who is a registered nurse, an expert clinician, but she does the great work of training the educators that you'll hear about this afternoon with the principals as they discuss that. But we have an opportunity, being two legacy healthcare systems that came together underneath the merger, with the intent and focus to bridge that gap that Dr. Christian just spoke about, create a greater access component, and ultimately keep our child and adolescents out of the inpatient setting, and also help the faculty and staff. So we have the pleasure to be behind the scenes, helping support both financially as well as educationally from a training perspective on evidence-based research, as well as recommendations for future plans in the work. So thank you, Dr. Christian and Dr. Foley, for the work that you allow us to do.
So we are deeply grateful for this additional resource and support to our community schools and the project and the commitment. I want to bring your attention to some of the images that you see here. You're going to see Dixie Way when she's training at John Sevier, Jim Shannon at Unicoi High School. The partnership and leveraging this additional resource has allowed us to accelerate work for students. And we're going to share the outcome of that as we have entered into the third year of the partnership. Systemic change and putting systems into place that have not existed previously take time. We understand that it's a 3 to 5 year process of implementation. If you were able to join the first webinar, we focused on how we rolled out the partnership in Unicoi County Schools specific to free asynchronous training around trauma-informed practices provided by the Strong Brain Institute. You will have access to that link today. You can use that with your faculty and staff. Also, intentional work around core values and the vision behind this work at each individual school. We believe deeply in community schools and understand the context of the school may require a different approach to pieces of the work and who they are and celebrating who they are, their mascots. That's an important part of this conversation. The office discipline referral. When we have students who have experienced an office discipline referral and someone has had a fight, for example, and they're suspended from school, and then they come back to school and go right back into that same classroom without a restorative conversation, ultimately that student has, in many cases, repeated a pattern of behavior, and we seek to interrupt that. So this office discipline referral process, when a student's suspended, they come back. What happened? What were you thinking about at the time? What have you thought about since? What do you need to do to heal this, restore this relationship, and how can we support you so you are successful at school? The reset and calm space evolved in the spring of last year. Mrs. Graham reached out to the principals in Unicoi County and said, we'd like to establish a partnership and investigate this idea of a reset space, and provided funding and resources to quickly implement this process. So this is important as well. So our principals and schools that are thinking about this work, I'm going to share an example of the elementary experience. When we have a vision for this reset space, it extends a calm space. Many schools are using calm space and trauma-informed practices. A student can go to that space in a classroom, reset, consider how they could re-engage. But a reset space is a space in an alternate setting in a school. And we're going to share that process. In order to really understand the depth of work around neuroscience and how do we mitigate adverse childhood experiences, we should consider the adult interactions. When teachers are supporting students who are in extreme stressful situations, it is very normal for adults to feel stressed themselves. I want to draw your attention to the image of the colored MRI. For those of you who are with us today, the image of the black and white is a 3-year-old brain, and we can see how extreme neglect absolutely has impacted child development at that point of the process. The brain develops till they're 25 years old. But let's consider an unstressed brain. The image you see here is actually medical students who are preparing to take an exam. So we are working with graduate students who have been learning self-regulation, And still, even in a stressful situation, the MRI is clear. Weaker control of thoughts, emotions, and actions. So how can we provide a continuum support for teachers and adults that encounter stressful situations in the same way that we're providing supports and innovation for students who encounter stressful situations in the school day? Common language has been critical to the implementation. The neuroscience trains us. A student or an adult needs a minimum of 62 interactions with consistency to craft a new neural pathway that's healthy and retains information. So again, thinking through years of support for students and what's possible. Resilient schools, self-regulation is the ability to calm in high stress moments. Am I aware of my emotions as they're happening? Self-awareness. The amygdala hijack, the part of the brain that involves emotion, fight, flight, freeze, going to disengage. Our conversation today is going to be specific to the reset spaces. You're going to hear the principals in Unicoi County refer to them as blue rooms, and that aligns to their mascot and who they are as the Blue Devils. So they've brought an intentional connection. But these are the practices that we have identified that are essential to resilient schools and systems of implementation that are consistent in the elementary to the middle to the high. Now I'm going to shift my seat for just a moment and talk to you from the lens of the principalship in an elementary principal. So I had the honor to be the principal of Anderson Elementary for 5 years in Bristol City Schools. And during that time, my first introduction to trauma-informed practices came in the second year of the principalship. In the first year, we had a high number of office discipline referrals. Students were challenged, dysregulated, often disrespectful. The inability to follow directions as a consistent pattern of behavior was a conversation for a large majority of students. Teachers had significant concern about behaviors that told us a story that we needed to consider a new innovative way to support students. In year one of the principalship, we partnered with 2 universities, UT and ETSU. We crafted intentional work around core values. Our values were we are kind, respectful, safe, responsible, and we are leaders. The vision, learning and leading to create our world, guided our process. We knew that we needed to learn if we wanted to lead in a different way. In year 2, between year 1 and year 2, my administrative team had a conversation and recognized we should craft a space for students to go to that is not an office discipline referral and teach them how to self-regulate. We crafted what initially was called the Believe in Me room because we had belief statements, and it evolved into the Reset room. I have an example here of the procedures that we designed and developed because you're going to see different examples in middle and high today. At the elementary level, we were able to add a full-time behavior interventionist to join our staff in the 3rd year of implementation. And we recognized that procedures were critical. In our situations, identified students could access a green card. They could remove themselves to the reset space. We had an adult in that area assigned at all times, or a teacher could ask a student to go to the reset space. It's important to recognize this was not an intervention just for students in tier 2 and tier 3 that we had identified that needed a behavior intervention plan or an additional reward system to really be able to celebrate their growth. And we talked about the process of the Dunn-Rankin in our previous webinar. This is for all students. We also recognized that teachers needed a resource and crafted a space for them. Reset, replay, and restore. Dr. Scott Lamy provided a lot of the resources you're going to see shared today with Ballad Health, Behavioral Health, and the team and our principals. But the reset room is different than the calm space in that it is a school-wide reset space to calm when a student is dysregulated. And as I said, adults also are welcome to use that space if they need a calm moment. I can remember there were days that using that walking treadmill were helpful to me as a principal. These are examples of the types of items that you could purchase. We want to share this example because The initial investment to start the reset space was not very expensive. You can see as you look at the different items that are available here that you could consider working with your own school budget until you craft other partnerships in your personal communities and or states to leverage supports. The data tells a powerful story. At Anderson, 2018 to 2019 was the third year. The data in 2016 to 2018 was very consistent. What we noticed in full implementation of the reset space, the training of trauma-informed practices, which happened in the second year, the Schoolwide restorative practices, which happened in the third year, you can see here the change, and this change has been maintained. Classroom disruption, 141 referrals dropped to 46, 67% reduction. Students understood and learned how to use the reset space to reset, replay the situation, and restore. Total incidences, 278 to 130, 53%. It's also important to notice fighting. As students learned a better way to respond, this fights dropped from 25 to 6. The school earned the gold level model of demonstration school status in Tennessee because of the work, and they maintained that status as the principal shifted from year 5 to year 6 and a new principal entered the conversation. This provides the lens of evidence for systems and how important systems are so that the work is built around the entire faculty staff, aligned to district goals and school goals for a continuation of support. We wanted to scale this up because what does happen to students in the elementary setting when that continuation of service is not available in the middle? So the principals that you're going to learn from here today are going to share their story. Dr. Amy Horton, again, the principal of the high school, Unicoi High School, and Dr. Kevin Graham are going to co-present their work in Unicoi County and middle school. But I'm going to say this team of leaders that are sharing their work are committed to the vision in their conversations, in the way in which they work with their faculty and staff, and they both have served as trainers to model examples of restorative practices in action. Dr. Horton.
I'm actually going to start. Thank you, Dr. Christian. We are excited to be with you today. Dr. Horton and I are going to kind of tag team this together. And we're doing that because we have worked very closely building an intentional plan that is very cohesive for our students in grades 6 through 8. The middle school here is grades 6, 7th, and 8th grade, and then they will transition to our high school. And so we believe that continuity for our students is key to making this a successful project. A little bit about the middle school. We usually range about 450 students. Our faculty and staff is 2 administrators, 35 faculty. We have a CTE coordinator, 1 school nurse, 1 school counselor for 450 students, but we do have 2 contract counselors. One is with Frontier Health and one is provided to us from Ballad Health. Our demographics were 86% white, 12% Hispanic, economically disadvantaged is about 32%, and we're about 16% students with disabilities. Last year, our testing data from the state of Tennessee, we were a TVAS level 3 for growth, and then we were an overall school grade of a C.
Hi, and good afternoon, everyone. I'm Dr. Amy Horton, the principal at Unicoi County High School. Very similar to what Dr. Graham just presented. Our high school is the only high school in our district, and we have approximately 617 current students with about 35 early graduates at this time. 9th grade, 148, 10th, 163, 11th, 168, 12th grade, 138. You can check out our statistics on our faculty and staff, just about how big our group is. Demographics, similar to the middle school, Dr. Graham. Our school letter grade for the previous school year was a D, and we were a level 2 in TVAS.
a lot of our work is built around our core values, and each of both schools have different core values, but yet they're still connected in some form or fashion. Here at the middle school, we kind of took the motto, UCMS students are respectful, responsible, and growing. We put posters up around the school showing our students in respectful acts, responsible acts, and kind of talk to them about how they will grow in academics, in citizenship, self-pride. We were very intentional when we did our branding for our core values, is that we put students on our posters who sometimes don't exhibit all of those behaviors, as just trying to be a driving force to kind of get them to start modeling positive behaviors for other students. And so we've been very intentional in that piece. But we also try to teach our students these core values on a weekly basis through videos and activities in their class during homeroom periods. And we try to always end it up with, we're the Blue Devils. So our motto is, don't be a devil, be a blue devil. And so you'll walk down our hallways and sometimes you'll hear one student telling another student, well, don't be a devil, be a blue devil. And so we think our core values are getting across to our students, but we really are focusing on making them respectful, responsible, and having them grow into productive citizens.
And moving on to the high school, we have the P4 model: pride, passion, purpose, and perseverance. And we look at that and we break that up into grade levels. So as freshmen, we really want to try to get those ninth graders develop pride in themselves, their family, their community, their school. As sophomores, that passion piece, like what do they really enjoy doing? They join clubs, participate in sporting events and activities. Junior year is all about purpose, and that's where they really decide, what do I want to do when I grow up? And then as seniors, it's all about perseverance and finishing strong. And so you'll see these posters up all over our school. We have videos that students have created that speak to that. Our students and our faculty own P4. In fact, at graduation every year, we have 2 students who will speak. P4 will be in every graduation speech. It is that impactful on our students. So we really live the P4 in Unicoi County.
Here is just a couple of, or 3 pictures of the Blue Room here at the middle school. We have a lot of the things that Dr. Christian mentioned before, as far as the equipment in there, massage chairs, treadmills, bicycles, punching bag, Legos, a lot of those things that that we hope that we have a variety of students who have a variety of interests. And so we try to accommodate as many of those interests as possible. One of our most used item is the punching bag. We did not even have that on our first list when we started developing the room, but it made sense. Our guidance counselor came to us one day and she says, we need a punching bag. These boys need a punching bag. And so made sense, because a lot of times boys would come into my office holding their hand after they touched the locker or the wall. And so we added the punching bag, and that's probably the most used item that we have. And so our students will often go in there, punch on that bag, reset, and go back to class. But as you can see in the pictures there, we do have a lot of different options for our students. The massage chairs is very popular with the adults in our building. Some students like to use the whiteboard to go in and draw. Sometimes they just go in there and sit in the bean bag and listen to the sound machine. So we really tried to make it a very cohesive, a very inviting room where our students can spend about 15 minutes and then get back to class.
And the high school Blue Room is very similar to the middle school, and that is by design. We wanted students to experience those tools in middle school and then have those same tools at their dispense there at the high school. So we wanted it to be aesthetically pleasing. So you see the beautiful mural in the background of our mountains. You see that massage chair that you saw at the middle school. We have a dry erase board. We have some soft lighting. We have a clock that has a timer on it. We do have a computer station, the treadmill, the little pedals, the bike. So we really tried to think about 612 about like different types of students, different types of situations, and how we might help those students to self-regulate depending on what their learning style is or their coping style is. So we wanted it to be aesthetically pleasing, but we didn't want it to be overwhelming. So a lot of our tools that we have, manipulatives, puzzles, coloring books, clay, those things are in a separate space in a cabinet and locked. And then students can request those because we just didn't want to throw everything out there because it can be overwhelming to a student who's already in a heightened state. So want to also say this is available for our students in 9th through 12th grade. It is available to our adults as well, but I have to show my commitment to our faculty and staff about the blue room and the reset spaces. I've created a reset space for the adults in my building, and we have a couple of different workstation places. And so we've begun a low budget form of a reset space for our faculty and staff. And we have some couches, some different types of seating. I have some essential oils. We have a sound machine. We have a treadmill, a pedal station, some coloring books and different things that the adults in our building can also use that space.
A big key to the success of our Blue Room has been our procedures, putting something in place that works not only for our students, but for our faculty and staff as well. So in our plan, what happens is if a student is in a classroom and they're feeling anxious or feel like they need to visit the Blue Room, they're going to pull a blue card. Every classroom has a blue pocket. Inside that pocket is a blue card. Once they pull that card, they're then going to come to the office. When they come to the office, they're going to give that blue card to our school secretary or one of the ladies working in our office. And then we use a Google Chat. Our Google Chat is made up of our school counselors, our 3 counselors, and they're going to send out such and such needs to see a counselor for the Blue Room. Then a counselor is going to, usually within 1 minute, response back, I'll come get the student. They will come to the office, get the student, then escort that student to the Blue Room. They will kind of talk with the student about the options of items they can use, and then give that student about 10 to 15 minutes in the Blue Room. Here, a little bit different than at the high school is that our counselor completes a reflective form with the students. They're going to sit down and ask them some questions, which we'll discuss here in just a few minutes. But really, they're seeing, okay, have they been restored, or are they in a good place to go back to class? And if the counselor determines that they are in a good place and can go back to class, they will usually escort them back to class, or they will kind of extend the counseling session just a little bit longer. One of the big things with our procedures is that we were afraid that students would find the room fun and take advantage of it. That has not happened. We had one student who thought they could go in there and play with some Legos. We had a conversation with that student, and now that student has only used the room a couple of times, but it was a true need. So that was a big fear of the administration. That was a big fear of our teachers, is that students will use it to get out of class. And based on our procedures and the way we have everything set up, that has not happened here at the middle school.
And we as well wanted to set our room up for success. And so we were very detailed as a committee, our resilient school team, to create procedures that teachers would support. And so we did the blue card, very similar to middle school, a checking in, checking out type situation. We have actually found, as we've implemented this the past year, that's not required. The teachers allow students, just if there is a need, to say, I need to go, can I go? And they let them go. A teacher can also refer a student, and teacher can say, why don't you take 5 in the Blue Room? And so that has actually worked better than in the cards. We have the cards, so it's a nice visual in the classrooms as a reminder that that resource is there. But we've been very lax as we've gone through this and felt like we haven't actually needed that. But it's in the procedures if a time does come that we do need that. But basically, the student reports immediately to the counseling office, lets them know they need the Blue Room. The counseling staff escorts them to the Blue Room. There's a little space between the counseling office and the Blue Room, but it's in the same hallway. So it is close enough. Counseling staff brings them into the Blue Room. They are shown the menu board of items. The student selects what item they want for the Blue Room visit. And if it's locked up, the counseling staff will pull that out for them. The counselor will set the timer, 5, 10, 15, no more than 15 minutes. It depends on what the need is at the moment. They'll set the timer, and the counselor will leave the space, and the student is allowed to stay in that space by themselves at the high school level. And the counselor, there's a window in the door so the counselor can see in. Once the visit has been completed, the student and the counselor will complete a restorative reflection that Dr. Graham had mentioned previously. And if the visit was successful and the student feels like they can go back to class, then we release them to go back. If it's not successful or they need 5 more minutes, then we'll give them 5 more minutes. If it's still not successful and we don't feel like, or the counseling staff doesn't feel like it's something that 5 more minutes would fix, then they'll pull that student and spend additional time with them, find out what's going on and how they can support them.
We've also established some expectations for using the Blue Room, and we really wanted those tied back to our core values, which were respectful, responsible, and growing. So we're for our Blue Room, it's really respectful and responsible. We want you to be respectful for the adults that you're going to encounter with the Blue Room. You can be having a bad day, but you're not going to be yelling while you're being escorted and screaming in the hallways. You're going to be respectful of others. You're going to follow all the rules. If the escorting adult says, we need to stop here or we need to do this, you're going to have to follow those rules. And the items in the room, you're going to have to take care of the items in the room. We've had our room since April of last year, and we've not had to replace one item yet. So our students have been very respectful of the items that they're allowed to use. We set the timer for 10 to 15 minutes. When that time is up, you're going to have to come out and talk to the counselor. You may get to go back in, but you have to be respectful of the time that we've allotted for you to be in the Blue Room. And a non-negotiable for us is that you have to complete that restorative reflection. We have to know the why you came, how are you feeling now? And that will allow our school counselors to work through coping mechanisms or see if you need some additional help so that we can get those students in a good place to return to class, because ultimately that's our goal, is for our students to stay at school and stay in class. The maximum number of visits allowed before escalation of school administration will be 3 per 9 weeks. As I said earlier, we've not had to enforce this, so we don't have students who are taking advantage of this. This was something we really did want to put in at the very beginning because we thought it would be an issue, but we've not had that issue. And then failure to observe expectations will result in an office referral with a consequence. We also want our students to know that just because you're going to the Blue Room, let's say you've done something, but you need to de-escalate before you have an office referral, the consequence is still on the table. You can still get a consequence. Going to the Blue Room will calm you down so you can have a good conversation with the principal or the admin. And so that, but the consequence is still going to be on the table if warranted.
Expectations for the high school, again, very similar. No cell phones are allowed. That's a big piece of this. We don't want them distracted with cell phones. They really need to figure out what's going on with themselves. They do complete that Google form, start the timer, access tools, clean up, exit the room when the timer ends, complete that restorative reflection on the iPad. Again, that kind of helps us collect some data about some things that students are going through, helps the counselors know what they might be able to do to support those students. We ask them to get a hall pass and then return immediately to class. And so you can kind of see that at the high school level, we're real focused on just the tightening things up and making sure that time that they are missing out of class is used and maximized as much as possible. Again, we have that maximum number, 3 per 9 weeks, just like middle school, but we don't have students who abuse that. I will say at this point, we do fight some stigma at the high school level with the Blue Room, and some of our students don't want anybody to know that they came to the Blue Room or don't want to ask to go to the Blue Room. So we're actually trying to combat that. That makes me understand that we really just need to continue mental health conversations in our building and support that and show that it is okay to need some help or to need a minute sometimes. And same thing Dr. Graham said, I'm going to echo that. This does not replace a consequence, and it is not a sandbox for students who get in trouble. They're not coming to the office in trouble and getting a sucker and going back to class. We've worked really hard, both Dr. Graham and myself, 612, to really make sure our faculty and staff know that's not what this is about. It is about though teaching self-regulation, de-escalation, and helping those kids get back into the class so they can learn.
Both the middle and high school are working very closely to collect data. We use this data to kind of basically develop, if we see that our students have such a situation that's arising from our data, then we may do an education plan for our entire school. Let's say vaping is coming up. We see a lot of kids who are going there for vaping, or fighting is an issue. Then we'll start doing education programs during our with our core values work. So around those topics, but some of the data we collect is the student name, date, time of day, grade level. We do a mental health check. Level 5, am I doing really great? Am I doing pretty good? Am I doing okay? I'm having a really hard time for today. I need to reach out for support. I'm struggling. We want to know what happened to bring you to the Blue Room. What were you thinking or feeling at the time? What items did you select to use in the Blue Room? That's important for us. We want to know what kids are using when they're in the Blue Room. What have you thought about since? How would you respond differently next time? What do you need in order to successfully return to the classroom? Was the Blue Room visit helpful? So those are some of the questions that we're asking on our reflective conversation. We want to know why you came. Was it helpful? And what do you need from us so that maybe you don't have to come back? What additional supports can we give to you? And we get a lot of that information when we do this restorative reflection. Some of our data here at the middle school, you look at our gender, and this data was collected through the end of March. We've had more males than females use our Blue Room. We have 7th graders here tend to use it more than 6th and 8th graders. We piloted this program last year. We opened in April with only 6th graders. 7th and 8th graders could use it if needed, but we really focused on those 6th graders who are now 7th graders. So they do have a greater awareness for the Blue Room. But right now at our school, 7th grade seems to be difficult. Most of our issues are coming out of 7th grade. And a lot of those students who are using our Blue Room are the 7th graders. Number of visits per student. We have a lot of students who've only used the room one time. And then we have several students who've used it 2, 3, and 4 plus. Those 4 plus students, we know who those are. Some of those are on behavior plans. Some of those are getting more extensive interventions. Some of those we have in, you talk to parents about therapy and just additional helps that we can provide them. So we are very strategic on those students. We discuss those students every month during our data meetings. We come in and talk about our student data as far as discipline, as far as behaviors, and our teachers are very focused in bringing recommendations and suggestions to the table. So we know all those students are using the Blue Room, and teachers give us updates, especially on those who've used it more than one time. Time of day utilization, we see a big increase in the afternoon, especially from lunch toward the end of the day. We have a lunch period where we do lunch and recess. So our students you get 156 graders together during recess playing football or running around outside. They start bumping into each other, which is going to escalate because they're all fighting now. And so we have to bring them in and give them visits into the Blue Room. So we think that's kind of our uptick in the middle of the day is that they've had the recess and they just been together more. It's less structured time. And so, that's something that we expect there. The good news is that 95 of the 96 students at the end of March have said that the Blue Room was successful. It worked for them. And, that's our goal. We want our students to go to the Blue Room, have a successful visit, and get back to class. Chronically absent. And this is our win here at the middle school. It's our chronically absent rate. Right now, last year we were at 21% as a school at the end of the year. Right now we're almost to the middle of April and we are at 8%. That says a lot for us. That says a lot for us. At the fall of this year, 3 students were chronically absent. This time at the end of the fall semester last year, 26 students were chronically absent. A lot of students were having a bad day. Something could have happened that morning and just not come to school. Though, because we have the Blue Room, we've been able to be very intentional on teaching our students those coping skills and giving them things that they need so that they're staying at school. We're not letting them go home. We're not letting them, you can call your parent and we can have conversations with your parents, but you're going to cycle through our Blue Room before you make that phone call, and we're going to keep you here at school. I'll give a story. We had a student come into the office the other day just screaming, I'm going home. I'm going home. I'm calling my mom. I'm going home. We ended up calming her down, getting her in the Blue Room, and she ended up staying at school. And so for us, our big win is that we are not only teaching our kids coping skills, but we're also keeping them here at school where we can teach them so many other skills.
And I'll share a little bit of data from the high school as well. It is a little bit more skewed as far as use by gender. We do have more females that will use the Blue Room than males. Again, I think that goes back to that stigma piece I mentioned earlier. Students love the chair, the soft items. They enjoy the bike. They enjoy just having a space. They will turn the lights off and just like chill and do nothing sometimes. It is used pretty much equally amongst the grade levels. And, reason students are using the Blue Room: home issues, just needing a break, peer relationships, academics. Before I stepped away to do this today, I had a student, our counselors were busy doing registration. He popped in my office. He was like, he was explaining to me that there was a situation with some classmates. He had some anxiety. He said to me, "Can I just go into the Blue Room for 5 minutes?" Absolutely. And so I'm trained. I grabbed the iPad. I walked him in. He didn't need anything. He really just wanted to sit in there for 5 minutes. And then I got him settled in. He came out. He said, "I'm good. I'm going back to class." I said, "Okay, thanks." Gave him a pass and he went back to class. And so I was even just able to do that. My office is across the hall from the Blue Room. And so I was able to do that with him today. And again, it was just an issue with some classmates today that he was trying to figure out how will he work with them and respond to them and moving forward with them. Our big win again is chronic absenteeism. At this point, we're basically a year in with our Blue Room. We started in the spring of last year. And so you can see we were at about 34% chronic absenteeism 2 years ago. Last year, we were about 32%. This is early data, right? So if you know anything about high school, senioritis is a real thing. But we were sitting in early March at about 14% chronic absenteeism. So huge drops. I look forward to continue to collect that data when we get our EOC scores back, when we get our graduation rate data back, when we get our ready graduate information back. I really feel like that will tell this story like this chronic absenteeism will, because our goal is to keep those students at school as much as possible.
And our wonderful colleagues at John Sevier gave us an idea of how can we share out our information. So we're providing a QR code. If you scan that, you can get links to more or to some of our additional resources that we use here in Unicoi County.
So because we are restrained in time and talking about work over a period of 12 months plus, professional learning has been a key to this. And you could see in the 5-year plan how we've been really intentional to leverage professional learning and multiple trainings at the school level to design and implement this work. I want to introduce Dr. Kyle Loudermilk to you now. Dr. Loudermilk is the principal at John Sevier. And it's interesting to note they are also part of the resilient schools. And we've had individual schools join the partnership. And this is the 2nd year for John Sevier Middle School. But when Mrs. Graham and her team from Ballad Health Behavioral Health had a conversation with Dr. Loudermilk to see their interest in extending this as part of the project and providing this support, Dr. Loudermilk did not have space. And I'm going to tell you, as a leader, as a principal, he made sure that they could rethink space and facilities. And from the initial conversations in the spring to changes in the work in the summer, he was able to implement this in the fall. So again, as we consider leadership practices and how important that voice is to commitment to the work, I encourage those of you who might think we'd love to do this, but where? We can always find space. So following Dr. Loudermilk's presentation, we're going to share a video that spotlights students, and then we'll shift into the panel conversation. So Dr. Loudermilk is going to take time and walk us through his story.
Thank you, Dr. Christian. So at John Sevier Middle School, we've been on a approximately 8-year SEL journey to help our students really understand and develop their social emotional learning skills. And that shout out goes to our counseling department, who's worked to develop that over the years. And as one of the things we go through this, you'll see is the reset room is a part of that journey. It's not the starting point. It's not the end point. It's just part of the journey. You can't implement a reset room without having all the pre-steps done before. So here at John Sevier, as you can see some of our data, we have 803 students. If you're familiar with East Tennessee, I always tell people that John Sevier is probably one of the most diverse student populations in our area. We're not very diverse, but given our area and the students we serve, we do feel like we are a very diverse population for East Tennessee. So as you can see here, we're approximately close to 50% economically disadvantaged, and about 18% of our students are served through our special education department. Last year, we were a letter D and in our school letter grade, and also our TVOS, or our growth data, was a level 2. And what I'm excited to say is we're excited for this year's data to come out from testing that starts next week in the state, because we really know that our teachers and our students and our staff have worked really hard this year through multitude of initiatives, and one of the key initiatives being our reset space, and all of those things working together to improve student learning and outcomes. So as we look at the next slide, we've got our Fab 5 expectations. So these are the expectations that we've set school-wide that we agreed upon as a staff, going through a process to get feedback and input from both our staff and our students on who are we as John Sevier Warriors. So we call these the Fab 5 expectations of accountability, kindness, perseverance, respect, and community. And those five words drive every single thing that we do, from a social and emotional learning aspect to a behavioral aspect, and just to helping our students become well-rounded students and citizens in our community. As you go to the next slide, you'll see that we've got these defined and the definitions provided for students in student-friendly language, and what this will actually look like. We want our students to know what this looks like, whether they're in the cafeteria, in the restroom, in the classroom, in the hallway. We've worked to define those with students and make sure that at the beginning of the year, after fall break, after winter break, after spring break, we review and revisit these expectations with our students so that we're all clear. That helps catch any new students that have entered our building to get them on board with our expectations. And also, we know how important it is to be consistent in helping our students know our expectations and to be able to live out those expectations each and every day here at John Sevier Middle School. So here's our reset room. We enjoyed visiting up the road a ways to Unicoi County to get some great ideas from both their middle school and high school on different elements and components of a reset space. And I get cracked up because our space here is blue through that lighting, but it's not a blue room because our school colors are red. So we want to make sure we honor our school colors. But we decided to call it the reset room because we have 4 feeder elementary schools that feed John Sevier Middle School. And as this develops and as this initiative and program expands to our feeder schools, we're hoping we can have that common language as they do in Unicoi County with the blue room, that we can call it a reset room in elementary. They can be familiar with that when they come to John Sevier, calling it a reset room, and then on to high school if we're able to expand it there. But as you can see, when students visit the reset room, we've categorized our items and the resources that are available into arts and tools. We have exercise equipment, we have comfort tools, sensory tools, and mindfulness tools. And a lot of this came from visiting Unicoi County to see what they had implemented, and also knowing from our counseling department, what are some things that students tend to gravitate to when they come to counseling and just need to have some time to reset at that time in a non-formalized setting. And now we've been able to incorporate a lot of those materials and resources in our reset room. So as we roll this out to not only students and staff, we wanted to make sure we were very clear on what the purpose of the reset space is for our students and staff. One of the things that was critical in our rollout of this was we had staff come down during one of their professional learning communities, one of their common planning periods, to visit the reset space. We went over explicitly with our staff the purposes, the reasons, the why, the how, and all the logistics that go into the reset space. And then we had our staff visit the reset room. But what is it appropriate for? It's when students become overstimulated by the environment here at the school, when they have that extra energy that they need to work off in order to be able to return to the class to stay focused and learn. If a staff member or a student can identify those visible signs of anxiety, such as a panic attack, we want the students to be able to access the reset space. If students are having negative interactions that have created a heightened but non-aggressive emotion. So again, we want to highlight that it's got to be non-aggressive. When we're going to have students come into our reset room, you'll see our expectations in a little while of what we expect of students in the reset room, but we want to be kind and respectful. Also part of our Fab Five ways of how we define a warrior here at John Sevier. So we can't have aggressive behaviors in our reset room. And also, it's not just a place, it's a place to come if students feel distracted more than normal, or they're having difficulty with just that focusing in the classroom. So again, shifting to what is the reset room not appropriate for? We've talked about this just a second ago, but if students are angry and they have aggression or threats of aggression, that's not the purpose. If students are simply in class and are bored and finished with their work, that's not the purpose. After an incident that would require an office referral or a classroom ejection. So if a student has a behavior that results in a consequence needing to come from an administrator, it's not a first stop at the reset room. However, as we've learned from our colleagues in Unicoi County, this is sometimes where administrators have discretion that a student may need to visit the room in order to self-regulate their emotions, to come down off of that adrenaline rush from whatever negative behavior they were involved in. And then we can deal with the consequences, the restorative piece, and the consequence that comes with behaviors. But it's not a first stop at the reset room, then come to the office. It's come to the office, let's evaluate to see if the students are in a state of mind that is capable of having conversations and discussions and reflections about behavior before we move forward. We don't allow our reset space to be a place where friends or group of friends can come in together. And also, we need students to self-identify. We need students to self-acknowledge that they need a reset. We don't force students to come to the reset space. We can invite them, we can encourage them, but they have to acknowledge their need. And lastly, we didn't want this to become a room where students who are sick and simply waiting on a parent to pick them up, or a guardian, or for whatever reason are waiting for a pickup from a family member, just to go to that room and wait. It's for a specific and intended purpose, and we want to have that fidelity and integrity to the purpose of the room. So here's our steps for the reset room. And I'm not going to read these verbatim, because here in a few minutes, you're going to watch a video of how we rolled this out to students. It's a 5-minute video where we rolled out the expectations. We rolled out for students how to come to the reset space and how to initiate that. But one of the key things we want to stress here is the initiating of coming to the reset room can either be done by the student on their own, or it can be encouraged by a staff member. We really want students to get to the place where they're self-regulating their emotions. They feel that anxiety or the anxiousness or their sadness or depression, and they notice those signs internally and seek support and help on their own. But we also know that we have to work with students at a variety of different entry points. So sometimes our staff will have to help students in recognizing those. One of the things you'll see is we start a Google form. When the student first comes to the reset space, we have them answer a very few small amount of questions on a Google form that once they get to the initial questions completed, it'll instruct them to head into the reset space. We have a Chromebook that we leave on kiosk mode. We have 2 of those so that it's always on our Google form. Students fill that first part out and enter the room. They set their own timer for 10 minutes. And at the end of the 10 minutes, they can return to the form to complete the form, and it's their exit ticket so that they know that are officially wrapped up with their time in the reset room, and they can check out with the counseling staff. Again, I'm not going to read over the expectations. They've been on the slide here for you for a few minutes, but as we transition to a video here shortly, you'll hear how our staff reinforced those and taught those to our students through our video demonstration. So one of the things that has been, I think, a key and a benefit here at Sevier is once students complete their reset room, you'll see this at the end, they have a question that asks, do you need to follow up with a counselor? We want to know if students have been able to self-regulate on their own and return to the classroom, or do they need to follow up with one of our school counselors? So once they submit the form, depending on how they answer that question, if they answer no, that they do not need to follow up with a school counselor, when they submit their form, we just simply collect the data, they check out with the guidance secretary, and they return to class. However, if they select that they need to follow up with a school counselor, what happens is it automatically generates an email that is emailed to our counseling department. So our counseling secretary, our in-house counselors, and others, to ensure that someone is able to follow up with that student and make sure we do a check-in with that student to resolve any other needs that may have come up to help that student self-regulate and check in to be prepared to return back to class. And we'll see some data here in a few minutes that shows how many students are able to self-regulate and how many students want to move, have some time with a school counselor. We rolled this out in actually September, or right after Labor Day. So the first Tuesday in September, we rolled this out to all students. We had a soft opening in August for our 6th graders. As you can see, year to date through March of 2024, we've had 203 visits. And if you look at our breakdown there, we're seeing that a lot of those visits are happening midweek. It was one of my wonderings when we first began this process that Mondays would tend to have a lot of students seeking to visit the reset room, coming back from a unstructured weekend to a structured school environment. But at the middle school level, we're seeing that it's typically midweek when students are having those needs for the reset space. So we do want to track our frequency of visits to see how that's working. And I want to also echo something that was one of my big questions when we visited Unicoi County was, is this something that's going to be abused by students? Is this something that students are going to view as a playroom? And we have not seen that. All of these 203 visits, our counseling staff will let you know that these are students that need to visit this room in order to self-regulate and return to a learning environment, ready to learn and be a student who can succeed in a classroom setting. So time of day, you're going to see how that varies, but very similar patterns to what you saw with some Unicoi County data is it's that lunchtime and afternoon time when students have been in the building for a while. A lot of visits increase as the day goes along. And also you can see our breakdown of how the reset room is being utilized by different grade levels. 6th grade, we are not surprised. It's that transition period from 5th grade to 6th grade, a transition from a smaller elementary setting to the middle school. So this is something we expect, something that we're not surprised about at all, is that our 6th graders need support, help, extra time, self-regulating with that transition. So we see that occurs. We also do try to encourage our faculty and staff when they visit to simply just check in. We don't ask all the necessary questions, but we do want to track that. And as you can see, we've had, I think, one staff visit this year that a staff member has taken time to let us know through the form that they visited our reset room. So one of the things that we really want to look at is what is the motivation for why students are seeking to come to the reset space. So as you can see in our top graph, we're looking at what is the antecedent to what draws a student for that need. As you can see, sometimes it's just the overall stress or anxiety that comes through school. It could be a peer conflict or peer relations that has got a student in maybe a tizzy for that moment or that morning or that afternoon. It could be family struggles, others that we don't identify, or social interactions that they're struggling with, or even some mental health challenges that the students are able to identify. And what our counseling department and our school counselors are able to do is to look at the feedback from how students fill out the form, and they're able to categorize these different reasons for visits. But one thing I want to point out here is if you look at what the initial emotion is when a student comes into the reset space to what is their exiting emotion. So if you can look, roughly 24% of our students who are coming to the reset space are coming from a feeling of anxiety, of anxiousness. We have 31% who are coming with just an overall feeling of gloom and sadness, while 35% are coming with frustration of anger. Again, that anger is not being displayed in any aggressive behavior, but internally they're feeling angry. But if you look over on the exiting emotions, how do students report they feel when they leave the reset space? So again, we have the initial emotion when they start filling out the form, they go into the reset space. When they exit the reset space, they complete the form, and look at our exiting emotions. We're now up to 41%, 42% of our students who are feeling happy, 23% who are in a calm state. But notice how the anger and the anxiousness and the sadness are all reducing. So we've seen about an 80% reduction in that negative emotion. As we look at the next slide and our next piece of data, we want to know, what are students utilizing when they're in the reset space? So we have those 5 broad categories of art, exercise, comfort, sensory, and mindfulness tools. And then on the bar graph, you see specifically what are those pieces and elements that students are utilizing to help self-regulate their emotions. As you can see, our massage chair is very popular. Once we sat in the massage chair in Unicoi County, we knew that we had to have one of those here at John Sevier. So during our visit, we learned a lot, but also there are some small items in here, such as those stress balls and silly bands. Those are items that we've identified are working in our reset space. So maybe we should look at incorporating those into every classroom, so that every classroom has a small place where students can maybe self-regulate within the classroom. So we use this data to not only identify what's working in the reset room, maybe it also serves as what elements need to be replaced over time, so we can budget for that, but also what can we also put in the hands of classroom teachers to help students in that environment, so they're not having to step away from the instructional setting, but they can hopefully self-regulate in the classroom. That is the next step in this journey we're on. So, as I mentioned earlier, when we look at the improvement rate and how many students have identified that, yes, my feelings have improved, we're roughly at about 80% of students who are saying either they have improved some, or yes, they have improved and are ready to return to class and ready to focus and learn. But also this number of 80%, if you look over here for students who have requested a counselor follow-up, 80% of our students are able to come into the reset space, self-regulate. They're monitored through a camera that's in there that's feeding our counseling secretary, and also our school counselors have access to that, so that they're able to observe the student without having to interact. But 80% of our students, 80% of 203 students, so over 160 students have been able to come into the reset space, the reset room, self-regulate, and return to class having self-regulated their emotions on their own. But we know that there's 39 students that our counselors have needed to follow up with. And anybody that works with students knows that during those sessions, you can learn a whole lot. Sometimes those lead to our counselors helping students get connected with services outside of our school. Sometimes our counselors learn of situations that need to involve the Department of Children's Services, and those referrals are being made. So it gives students an opportunity to regulate and also be in a state of mind where they can share concerns with one of our school counselors. And maybe it's a conflict here at school between 2 peers that we need to restore. It could be a conflict between a staff member and a student that we need to restore. So all of this are areas that our counselors are able to support students if they need that. But we also want to celebrate that 80% of our students are able to self-regulate and return back to the learning environment. So I know that was a quick journey through this, and just as our friends in Unicoi have, we provided here a link. We tried to put everything we could into a digital handout. We want you to be able to have access to all the information from our SEL journey we have our SEL map that shows you what we do over the entire year to help students every morning for the first 20 minutes, have some lessons and opportunities to work as a grade level family or a classroom family to dive into some social and emotional learning and some skills that our students need that aren't necessarily taught at home, and how we can help students with that. And then how does all of that help flow into the use of the reset space or the reset room, and everything from our expectations, our Fab Five, all of the things that we use here, because it all falls under the umbrella, and it's not we don't work in silos. It all comes together for a beautiful piece to provide that whole child support here at John Sevier. So we want to make sure you have access to that. One of the things that we got from our friends up in Unicoi County was their shopping list. So we put on this link, you'll find a link to a spreadsheet that shows you each item that we purchased for the reset space, the vendor, typically Amazon, because that's the easiest place to buy anything nowadays, and the price we paid, the quantity we bought, and how we utilized the funding that we received, because while we did have a partnership with Ballad Health Behavioral Health, and we are blessed and so grateful for their partnership, there are elements of this that any school or any entity organization can do on a small and slight budget. And that's, I hope you can see through our process here. And as Dr. Christian said, we ended up having to take one of our former conference room spaces and split that right in the middle and make it into half of that is now a counseling space and half of that is our reset room. So again, we had to get creative, but if you were to come visit John Sevier, which we would welcome at any time, you'll see how this space is in the perfect area. It is in our counseling department, but I do want to stress one of the things that we wanted to make sure that our staff knew and that our students are aware is that this is not a counseling initiative. This is not something that just belongs to the John Sevier Counseling Department. This is a school-wide support. It just happens to be located and housed in our counseling department. That's the easiest space that we could find to find the location that we could have monitored by staff all throughout the day. And it's just housed there, but it's not a counseling initiative here at John Sevier. So I think we're going to transition at this time to a video. And this is how we rolled this out to our students here at John Sevier Middle School.
For those of you who can stay with us, we're going to share the video and then continue our panel conversation for questions and answers.
Hello, John Sevier Warriors. We're excited to show you our reset room that is in partnership with ETSU and Ballad Health.
Our reset space is a designated safe area where students can go to reset themselves when they start to experience any feelings they find difficult or overwhelming and are causing them to be unfocused. Examples of when students may use the reset room: when a student is anxious about an academic or social situation, when a student is overstimulated by an activity that's inside or outside the classroom, could be in the hallways, in an assembly, maybe with a group project, or when a student is anxious about a negative interaction and they need a space to think. This room will be available for all students who are showing an immediate need as determined by school personnel. The reset room can be utilized up to twice in 9 weeks.
So we've worked really hard to try to stock the reset room with items that we feel will help you refocus your mind and your body so that you can get back to learning. We have several different stations. One is our mindfulness stations. So you'll find posters on the wall that will help you walk through strategies to calm your thinking and to calm your body. We also have some breathing boards that you can utilize as well. We have a sensory station, which includes several boxes of fidget toys that you can use. You just pull them out, use what you need, and then put it back. We have several comfort items in the room. We have lots of different types of seating. We have a weighted stuffed dog. We have a massage chair that you can use as well. So find your most comfortable spot that will help you kind of relax and reset. We have an art station with coloring books, sketch pads, drawing pads, dry erase boards, things like that you can use to kind of express your thoughts and your feelings. And then we have an exercise station where you can work off some of that extra energy. You can get some of those feelings out, some of that frustration out. We've got some bike pedals. We also have a treadmill that's available at your request. Some other items you may find in here that will help you out is we have a sound machine. You can put on some relaxing sounds or some music. We have a TV that will have some relaxing scenes and videos going as well. And we have some sand trays and things that will help you, or Legos that you can use to help work through some of those feelings that are going on or get out some of that extra energy.
When you recognize these feelings, you need to ask your teacher for a Smart Pass. Your teacher will then input the Smart Pass and a counselor will approve this. Once you've been approved to come to counseling, you will come in, sit at the table where the computers are, and then begin your reset form. You will see that it says time for a reset. Click next. You will enter all the information for the questions. So your last name, first name, your lunch number, grade level, and then it's going to ask you, how are you feeling at the moment? So you can pick from the chart there. And then what's causing you to have this feeling? Then you will click Next. At this point, you will go into the reset room. Once you have completed the 10 minutes and your timer is complete, you'll come back out here and you will complete the remainder of your form. It asks you which reset tool you used. Then how are you feeling after you've left the reset room? If you're not feeling better after you've left the reset room, you can click whether you need to follow up with a counselor or not. And then you need to submit your answers down at the bottom of the form. Talk to Ms. Franklin, who will then send you back to class.
When you come to the reset room, there are some expectations that are expected to be followed. Maintain a calm voice, be respectful of the counseling staff, follow the rules for the reset room, be respectful of de-escalation items, set and follow the timer, put away all items that you use when you are finished, and leave the room when the time is up, and then check out with the counseling staff at the end of the session.
That is an excellent way to bring our conversation today to a close. Dr. Loudermilk, your team did an extraordinary job training the students. So we want to thank everyone who joined us today. Dr. Dixon, is there anything else as we transition? It's 1:29.
I just love this and I love our association with you guys. Excellent work.
Thank you.
I would like to just say again, thank you to our partners, ETSU and Ballad Health Behavioral Health. You all have helped us along this journey, and we just are very appreciative of your all's support.